Hey there, I'm Matthew Hawkins, though most folks just call me Hawk. My buddies in the Army gave me that nickname. I'm fresh off my third tour overseas, worn out but buzzing with excitement to finally surprise my family. The whole flight home, all I could think about was crashing in my old bed, maybe sharing a cold one with my dad on the creaky porch swing. But as the cab pulled up, something wasn't right. My house was gone. Instead, there was just an empty lot with patchy grass and a for sale sign sticking up like a bad joke. I rubbed my eyes, thinking maybe the jet lag was hitting harder than I thought. "You sure this is the right address?" I asked the driver, my voice thick with disbelief. He double-checked his GPS. "Yep, this is it. 1247 Maple Street." I stumbled out of the cab, my duffel suddenly weighing a ton. Mrs. Rodriguez, our neighbor, was out watering her roses. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. "Matthew? Oh, honey, is that you?" "Mrs. Rodriguez, what happened to my house?" She put down her watering can, nervously wringing her hands. "Oh, sweetie, I thought you knew. Your stepmother, Harper, sold the place about 6 months ago." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "That's impossible. My dad would never." "He didn't know, Matthew. It all happened so fast. One day the house was here, the next. Well, you can see for yourself." I clenched my fists, struggling to keep calm. "Where are they now? My dad and Lily?" She sighed. "Last I heard, they were staying at the Sunset Motel on Route 9. It's been tough on them." I thanked her and called for another cab. On the ride to the motel, my mind raced. How could Harper do this? And where the hell was she? The Sunset Motel was a dump, peeling paint, a flickering neon sign, the works. I found my dad and Lily in room 13. When the door opened, I barely recognized him. He looked broken. "Matthew, what are you doing here, son?" I didn't say a word. I just pulled him into a hug. Over his shoulder, I spotted Lily peeking out from behind the ratty curtain, her eyes red and swollen. "Hey, squirt," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Come here." She ran into my arms, sobbing. "I missed you so much, Matthew." We piled into the tiny room, and Dad sat heavily on one of the beds, shoulders slumped. "I'm so sorry, son. I never thought Harper. I cut him off. It's not your fault, Dad. We're going to fix this." Lily tugged on my sleeve. "Are you going to make the bad lady go away?" I looked at her tear-streaked face, then at my defeated father. In that moment, I made a promise to both of them. "Yeah, kiddo, I'm going to make everything right, no matter what it takes." The next morning, after a rough night on the motel couch, I slipped out quietly while they were still asleep. First stop, the county clerk's office. I needed answers. "I need to see the deed transfer for 1247 Maple Street," I said to the lady at the desk. She eyed my wrinkled uniform but typed away at her keyboard. "That was processed about 6 months ago. Seller, Frank and Harper Hawkins. Buyer, Davis Real Estate Holdings." My stomach dropped. "Can I see the paperwork?" She pulled up the scanned documents. There it was, my dad's signature. Except it wasn't. I knew his messy handwriting anywhere. "This is forged," I muttered under my breath. "Excuse me?" I shook my head. "Nothing. Thanks for your help." Back at the motel, Dad was up, looking more lost than ever. "I don't understand, Matthew. How could she do this?" I showed him the forged document. His face turned pale. "That's not my signature. I never signed anything like that." "Find anything." Lily piped up from the corner, where she was coloring. "Harper had a special friend. He came over a lot. They always whispered and laughed." Dad and I exchanged glances. "Special friend." Lily nodded. "Mr. Davis. He sells houses." The pieces were starting to come together. I needed more info. I headed back to our old neighborhood, and Mrs. Rodriguez was more than happy to spill the tea. Oh, honey, it was a scandal. Harper and that Mark Davis fellow were real close. Always meeting for coffee, business lunches. You know the type. Let's just say, I don't think they were discussing property values in the back of his Lexus. My blood was boiling. I thanked her and headed back to the motel. Dad was sitting on the bed, staring at the floor. "Talk to me, Dad. What happened after I left?" He sighed heavily. "I don't know, son. I checked out. Couldn't even get out of bed most days. Harper says she'd handle everything. I thought she meant groceries, not this." Lily climbed into his lap. Daddy was sad. Harper yelled a lot. She said mean things. I knelt in front of them. What kind of mean things, Lily? Her lip trembled. She said we were useless, that Daddy was broken and I was just a burden. I saw red. Why didn't you call me? Dad looked ashamed. She told us you were too busy saving the world, that we'd just be a distraction. I stood up, pacing. That's it. I'm finding Harper. She's going to pay for this. Matthew, no, Dad pleaded. Just let it go. We'll figure something out. No, Dad, I'm not letting this slide. Harper and her boyfriend think they can walk all over us. They've got another thing coming. Lily looked up at me with hopeful eyes. Are you going to be our superhero, Matthew? I managed a small smile. Something like that, kiddo. First things first, though, we're getting you two out of this dump. Then we take back what's ours. With Dad and Lily settled in a better hotel, I set my sights on the real estate office where Mark Davis worked. As I stepped into the office, a familiar face caught my eye. Matthew Hawkins? No way. It was Lisa Chin, my high school crush, now looking even more stunning and apparently working here. We hugged, and for a moment, I felt that old spark between us. What brings you here, soldier boy? She asked, her tone playful but curious. I gave her the cliff notes of Harper and Mark's scam. As I talked, her eyes widened. Holy crap, Matthew, that's awful. I've been working here for a while, and I always had a feeling something was off with Mark's deals. Let me help you dig into this. Over the next few days, we combed through records together, and her insider knowledge turned out to be a gold mine. We started seeing a disturbing pattern. Elderly homeowners being tricked out of their properties. One file in particular stood out. Look at this, Lisa said, pointing to a document. The Johnsons, sweet old couple, sold their home way under market value to Davis Real Estate Holdings. I reached out to the Johnsons and arranged a meeting. Mrs. Johnson answered the door, looking frail and defeated. We thought it was a blessing, she explained, her voice shaking. Mark said he had a buyer who'd let us stay on as renters. Next thing we knew, we were evicted. Lost everything. My fists clenched in anger. This wasn't just about my family anymore. These scumbags were preying on the vulnerable. I decided it was time to confront Harper. I tracked down her new address, a swanky downtown apartment. When she opened the door, that smug smile of hers made my blood boil. Well, the prodigal son returns, she sneered. Come to thank me for taking that dump off your hands. I pushed past her into the apartment, not in the mood for games. Cut the crap, Harper. I know what you and Mark did, like forging my dad's signature. Real classy. She actually laughed. Prove it, tough guy. Your daddy signed those papers. Not my fault, he was too depressed to remember. I stepped closer, my voice low with fury. I'm going to make this right, and you're going to pay for what you did to my family. Her expression darkened, her smile turning into a thin, cold line. Is that a threat, soldier boy? Better watch yourself. Wouldn't want to ruin that precious military record of yours. I stormed out, seething with rage. As I hit the street, I literally ran into another familiar face, Ryan Miller, an old buddy from the army. Matthew? What the hell, man? Ryan was in a police uniform, and when I saw that, I told him the whole story. Matthew, this is serious. Look, I'm a detective now. Let me do some digging off the books. This sounds bigger than just real estate fraud. Ryan was right. Over the next week, he and Lisa uncovered an even darker web. Harper and Mark weren't just scamming old folks. They were involved in identity theft and money laundering, working for some dangerous people. Meanwhile, Dad's health was deteriorating under the stress, and Lily was having nightmares, struggling to adjust to her new school. One night, she broke down sobbing. I don't like it here. I want to go home. I held her close, fighting back my own tears. I know, sweetheart, I'm trying to fix it. But the legal wheels were turning far too slowly. Every day that passed was another day Harper and Mark were getting away with their crimes, and another day my family suffered. Lisa saw how close I was to my breaking point. Matthew, I know that look, she warned. Don't do anything stupid. We're so close to blowing this thing wide open. I nodded. But inside a plan was forming, a dangerous, probably illegal plan. Seeing Dad's sunken eyes and Lily's tear-stained face, I was done playing by the rules. Sleep eluded me that night as my mind raced with ideas on how to take down Harper and Mark. The next morning, I called Ryan. "I've got an idea, but I need your help. How do you feel about going undercover?" Ryan was all in. We set up a meeting with Mark, with Ryan posing as a wealthy out-of-town investor looking to flip some properties. Lisa helped us craft a backstory that would appeal to their greed. The day of the sting, I sat in a van outside, listening in as Ryan strolled into Mark's office. "Mr. Davis, Ryan Edwards. Pleasure to meet you," I heard Ryan say, his voice smooth. "Welcome, Mr. Edwards," Mark replied, oozing fake charm. "I hear you're interested in some creative investment opportunities. Let's just say I've got cash to burn, and I'm not too concerned about where it came from, if you catch my drift." I heard Harper's voice, and my fists clenched involuntarily. "Well, you've come to the right place, Mr. Edwards," Harper said. "We have ways of cleaning up messy situations." For the next hour, they laid out their entire operation, thinking they were reeling in a big fish. Little did they know every word was being recorded. "And don't worry about those pesky homeowners," Mark chuckled. "We have ways of making them cooperative." I gritted my teeth, thinking of the Johnsons, of my dad and Lily. It took everything I had not to storm in there myself. Just then, Lisa, who was monitoring another feed, burst into the van. "Matthew, we've got a problem. Harper's not just laundering money for small-time crooks. She's tied to the Alvarez cartel." My blood ran cold. This was bigger than we thought. I radioed Ryan, signaling him to wrap it up. "Well, Mr. Davis, Mrs. Hawkins, this all sounds very interesting. I think we have a deal." That was the cue. I heard the door burst open, followed by shouts of FBI. "Nobody move." I rushed in just in time to see Harper and Mark being cuffed. The look of shock on Harper's face when she saw me was almost worth everything we'd been through almost. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The FBI raid uncovered mountains of evidence. Harper and Mark were looking at decades behind bars. I used my VA benefits to secure a modest but comfortable house for Dad and Lily. The day we moved in, I saw a spark return to Dad's eyes. "Son, I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I hugged him tight. "No need, Dad. We're family. It's what we do." Lily ran around the house, squealing with joy at having her own room again. It was the first time I'd seen her truly smile in months. That's the end of my story. Now I got a question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven Harper for what she did to our family? Or do you think some actions are truly unforgivable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.